This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. I want to talk about why do we give too much importance to human creative imagination and innate skills, and too and too little importance to language, ideological language framing, and how that leads us to misunderstand and misrepresent the very nature of the human condition, and we engage in self-deception about our own human identity, about our about how to define the human species, and I said it before. I mean, this is everything is obvious, but I want to repeat it again. A little deception here, a little omission there, a little of this, a little of that. It just makes us diverge in different directions, for sure, because it depends on many factors and variables, but it just makes most of us misunderstand and misrepresent our psychosociocultural identity, main features, and of course, and that is more than relevant. That is crucial, because we just it's because it matters a lot if we want to engage in a meaningful way for a transition or for a change, for a radical change in our societal and economic systems and civilizational system that exists. This parasitic, this is a world phenomenon. This is not just Western. This period of history of 10,000 or whatever it is, 10,000 years of the dominance of the imperialistic civilizational paradigm is still here. It has only been, again, the human skills, okay, and the creative imagination that is mostly about applying it in a technical way. Even in arts, you have innate skills, an artist, okay, you know, a musician, a painter, a genius like Einstein, or you have these characteristics, these features, these traits that are innate, these skills. Okay, in many of us, we don't even have the opportunity to develop them, start to develop them early in our lives. For so many of us, do you know how many Einsteins could have existed throughout the history of mankind? Nobody knows, but they have existed. They exist today that nobody knows about them. Maybe they are mining your cobalt in Congo. And this is the emphasis in these creative skills, the imagination, the ingenuity of mankind, and that we have been able to create these beautiful temples and these beautiful things, like the Sistine Chapel, or the aqueducts, or the so many objects, which are objects, okay? Aren't they beautiful? Aren't they an achievement in engineering and architecture, or in art? Yes, they do. Like we have the same in literature and philosophy, mathematics, and everything. Isn't it amazing? Our creative imagination, our ability to push the boundaries of knowledge. But knowledge doesn't empower people, okay? Unless people has already power. Because knowledge is mostly a tool for deception, for manipulation. Because it's asymmetric. Knowledge is not democratic. Even when it's democratically available, it's not democratically distributed. Why? Because all of us, according to a class system, which is one point, a very important point, we need to look for a job. We need to have a career. We need to sacrifice, even sometimes sacrifice our youth to become somebody in life. It's not about learning. Yeah, and that's another thing. Learning is one thing, understanding is another thing, and understanding in an holistic way, which means in to learn, to train our critical and analytical skills, to frame multiple contexts in an interconnected system of analysis that allows us to understand the reality as a whole, not as a compartmentalized, or that we are an expert in something and you don't understand almost anything about other issues. And then we are disconnected from reality, and we are disconnected from ourselves as human beings. And we have these slogans that we all use, that frame ourselves as these dualistic creatures with two natures, okay, fighting each other. These two natures fighting each other inside us. The good and the evil are always fighting each other. So therefore we are able to do such amazing things. But at the same time, evil is there waiting to take control. And is it true or not that we are capable of evil things, of evil deeds? Yes, everybody knows it. But there we need circumstances. The circumstances matter or not? The manipulations matter or not? The instrumentalization and the weaponization of values, the instrumentalization of human beings through the weaponization of values, of principles, of concepts and ideas in the form of narratives, again, ideological and language framing. That's the basis of human comprehension and judgment. They don't come, they are not, most of what we use, most of the concepts and framing, ideological framing, is not. We talk a lot about freedom. And we think when we analyze a piece of the reality, a frame of an event, an incident, whatever it is, we see it through our ideological, cultural framing. And we do our analysis always in the believing, not even thinking about it, surely, that it's our own interpretation, as if that interpretation comes out of a capability of making a judgment without having references, without having in our subconscious mind the support, the ideological, the narrative, the support of the narrative, of the dominant narratives that make up our identity. And this is, I mean, this is difficult to explain. I know it's easier to understand than to explain, because it's multiple is multiple things that you need to in the equation to understand this reality. The point is, we can understand. We need. It's what I want to say is going like, it's like we have to go back to the drawing board. Okay, we have to go back and see what is really the human condition. What does it mean to be socio-cultural, socio-cultural animals? What culture? What is really culture? What is the world of ideas, you know, and the world of feelings and emotions, and the reality out there? And there are, and we all, even for the peoples, for the indigenous peoples, they do not live completely in nature. They live in a world that was created by their sociocultural nature. Where the creative imagination plays a role. Where the skills, the innate skills play a role. But it's the language framing, the ideological framing, it's the ideas that, and you know, ideas do not exist. It's always like an idea seems to be separated from other ideas. That doesn't exist. Ideas come from existing paradigms, existing narratives that are filled with other ideas and concepts about reality. So it's a dynamic environment where our ability our ability, or our creative ability, adds something on the top of. It's kind of an epigenetic thing. It's something that is new. You know, we can um, we can come up with new ideas, but we cannot separate the new ideas from the existing ideas, or the existing paradigm. Um, because even for opposition, we always built it on already a reality that's an existing reality, and that existing reality is the reality of language framing and ideological framing. So we need always to have this in mind, that we don't start, we never start from a blank slate or state. I never know which one is correct. We do understand the reality always through lenses. We don't see the reality directly. We don't perceive. We don't analyze. We don't understand. We don't make prognostics, or we don't diagnose, or anything without existing frames, existing ideological and language framings. And those framings, when we believe, by believing that our analysis of the reality is free, in the sense that nobody is putting pressure on me. I can imagine right now that I'm expressing my free thoughts. I'm a free person. I'm a free thinker, or whatever. That's not true. That's the point. I can use my creative imagination, my other skills eventually, my intelligence or whatever. But I'm not. I'm not. Even if I try to get it from scratch, I have to analyze whatever. If I want to say, okay, let's go back to basics. Let's go back to the so-called drawing board. But I'm not starting out of a blank slate. Okay, I'm starting. I'm whatever analysis I'm doing. It has many influences and variables that are part of my experience, my life experience, the cumulative knowledge, and the dominant narratives that I have in my subconscious mind that dictate, okay, the structural, the structure of how I analyze reality, how I analyze events, how I connect the dots. So, what's the importance of this? This is why it is crucial that we truly understand the nature of the socio-cultural nature of our condition, and really understand what it means. Because it has been instrumentalized, and again, instrumentalized through what? Through indoctrination. But indoctrination is impossible to avoid indoctrination. That's one of my points. And indoctrination, what is indoctrination? It's the instrumentalization of human beings through the weaponization of value systems, ideas, concepts that are spread through ideological and language framing narratives. That's what it is. So what matters is to understand how can we, if we want to have a civilization, if we want to move towards a civilization that that's what I call it. It doesn't matter, it's just a description. Ecological holistic civilization. Because ecological by itself, it's not enough. It has to be holistic. And it has to be based on a socio-ecological political economy, what I call a sufficiency and reciprocity economy, because it was how we as a species has survived throughout hundreds of thousands of years. Not this little bubble that we have, that we praise so much because of the achievements, okay? Again, because of these so wonderful achievements. How many people every day go to places, museums, temple sites, Rome, to Paris, to so many places to visit the splendor, the glory of empires, these megalomaniacal, to glorify and eternalize, in most cases, megalomaniacal, narcissistic sociopaths and psychopaths, still run the imagination of so many of us. And I come to the conclusion that I used to think that arts were very important, and then literature was very important, and poetry and all this to our full development as human beings, which means for our full ethical and aesthetic development. I do not believe it anymore. Not because I deny the beauty or I deny the ideas of the power of that form of communication. It's because most of it, okay? Most. That's the point. That's not only because literature. What I'm getting to is not to diminish the value of literature, poetry, philosophy, this and that, and so forth and so on. Okay. It's because of another problem, another layer of the problem of where we are stuck, that we are stuck with, which is this idea that certain people are wiser, okay? They are authorities. They are again, go back to what I said about the skills, the innate skills, and the creative imagination. These people seem they are better, smarter, wiser stronger. They are more fit. They are the ones that are supposed to lead us, to save us, to train us, to indoctrinate us. And this is wrong. If you understand the very nature of the human species, you understand that it has never been, the survival of the human species is never about following leaders, following authorities, following saviors. Okay? We have lived in democratic, the more egalitarian the communities, the more freedom they have and the more democratic they are. And this leads us to the way we understand the human sociocultural condition is so deep, manipulated by these ideas, this pyramid scheme that we have, that most of us always go to the same paradigm, to that we just do not really have a critical analysis, holistical, or comprehensive, if you prefer, holistical analysis of how the systems that we allowed the minority, usually the sociopathic, the people with sociopathic and psychopathic traits, opportunists, narcissists, megalomaniacals. They have this advantage. This is true. They have the advantage of using their innate skills and the power of a creative imagination to fool us, to manipulate us. Not because they are more powerful, but because they are mean. They are the meanest among us, and therefore they have power. If we allow them to create a system, when anytime you allow them to create a legal system, a structure, a social or a state structure, a structure that allows them to legalize, to become a legal, to become a legal authority, okay, through the course of time, and they will create this legal authority. They will design this legal authority to authorize them to control us, to control society, to control the ideas, to be the ones that put the seal of approval in which narratives are correct. And then they will create the moral code to glorify them and their system and their interpretation of the socio-cultural nature of the human being. And you have a perverse reality, a perverse way of understanding our very nature. I know for many of you this is very difficult to swallow, because this requires a process to understand this. It took me decades, because it needs to be a process, sometimes slow process with setbacks. Now you go back. It's not really something that is a progress line like this. It goes up and down and up and down. Of conscious transformative process. And to understand how evil and perverse is the perception of the human socio-cultural condition to the normalization and naturalization of class caste based systems that are built for only one purpose: control, exploitation, submission, to force people, to push people, to drive people into voluntary submission through many means, but also through the power of ideological and language framing. So there are no there are people with skills that are unusual, which that these people exist, and they can be useful. Not all, many of them are not useful at all. Okay, but some of them are useful because they bring new knowledge. Okay, on new. They have beautiful creations, but there is this problem: they are not better than us in any form or shape, and we need to become conscious of this, not only intellectually. We need to understand it as part of a holistic perception of ourselves as human beings, as a sociocultural species that can only exist in a reciprocity system. We are not authorities in anything. We don't need leaders. It doesn't mean that we cannot elect or choose or do whatever people to represent us. That's not what I'm saying. It's our perception of them as authorities, as top-down. That's the point. This is so perverse because this makes us understand ourselves and the reality in this superiority, and inferiority. Some are inferior, others are superior, and then there is the steps, and there are the meritocracy, which is the weaponization of merit. There is nothing about meritocracy that we should praise. It is the weaponization of merit. It's nothing else but that. So, this is what I'm trying here is a very broad, deep and wide analysis. I always want to point it out because I'm not trying to. What I'm trying to do is just to have an analysis where I try to understand the flaws I see in so many smart people, academics of many fields, and I can see the flaws. I can see the limits of as well as others are going to see that on me, which is it is normal, absolutely normal. That's why we need each other, not authorities, not leaders, not saviors, not whatever it is, much less celebrities and influencers. And this is just, this is dog poop. What we need is a comprehension of our ideas and human judgment and human identity and human perception and self-perception, and that's how we build relations with other human beings and with other species and nature and life in general, how it matters, how our psycho-socio-cultural balance is important, how meaningful lives where our relations matter a lot, how everything, you go to psychiatry and psychology, and you see a distorted, I mean, because the idea of following leaders is also the same idea that leads to pointing the finger to ourselves, to blame ourselves for a dysfunctional system that we are supposed to adapt and comply with and conform in order to have the right to exist. And everything is the framing, the ideological framing, because again, so many scientific papers, okay, suppose science based, I mean pseudoscience, literally, that frame the human species and the frame this individualistic framing of the human species, the pursuit of self-interest, the pursuit of profit-driven economy, unlimited accumulation of wealth, the privatization of everything, the primacy of private property. This everything is combined together. This forms a web of deceit, where all of us that we have to bind to. We are not. We are born into it. Okay. Therefore, all our lives, the language framing. I find it horrible. I always thought, okay, people say, there is the bees, and then yes, there's a queen. Where did that come from? Not from nature. Do you think it is an inspiration of nature to say the queen, the bees need a queen, a female, that the only purpose of its existence is to keep is to lay eggs, and it is a queen. Why is it a queen? And this is the language framing, this ideological frame, that we associate these things, and then we say, and that we use the ideological and ideological cultural language framing that we that we use to explain our very dysfunctional systems, societal and civilizational systems, in order to explain nature, how nature works. And so many of us, and so smart that we are, and we don't even understand that. And we don't understand that so many models that are used to analyze nature and to analyze so many other phenomena are basically flawed. They are extremely biased. They are conceptually wrong. But what matters is to build a logical narrative. The logical narrative is more important than the axioms, because most people don't look for it. Those people look for the logic in the narrative. They don't look into if the premises are wrong, are false, are falsified, are used to manipulate the rest of the you know. And this is what we need to look at. We need to look into this in a conscious transformative process, because that's what we need to go through. We don't get rid of the dominant narratives in our mind only by understanding some concepts or some ideas intellectually. We need to go through a process of conscious transformative process in order to make other values and other ideas and principles to become dominant. We don't get rid of the old narratives; they will stay there. They will stay for us forever and all our lives. We don't get rid of anything. That's why we need to be careful to what kind of shit do we expose ourselves. Because the function of our senses and our cognitive systems is to process the stuff that comes through our senses. Okay? Through our eyes and our ears, especially, but also through our nose and through our mouth and skin. And nothing is neutral. Don't take things as if they don't have they are not charged, as they are charged emotionally, as they have always a cognitive and affective charge. Okay, they are not neutral, and we need to be aware of it. That's why we need a culture. That's a change in the culture, a change in ideas, in order to understand ourselves, to understand, to change the picture of how we understand the very nature of the socio-cultural human condition. That's what we need in order to be able to organize and unite around sound principles for a culture of true liberation, for a culture of peace and democracy and cooperation, that needs to be internationalist, because we cannot solve anything only at the national level. We can do many things at the national, at the local level, at the regional level, at the national level, but we need an international order. We need an international civilizational paradigm. I call it ecological holistic civilization. But we need this revolution of the mind in order to get there. We need to understand and the way we exercise our freedom is to start to understand that most of what we think, most is based on ideological and language framing that is not ours, that has never been ours, that is being part of us because we are part of a socio-cultural system. Our role most of the time is just because we find something more logical, or just we feel more better with these ideas or that. I mean, we have to a certain extent, we have the power to choose, but most of the time we don't understand why we choose what we have chosen. And that's the main point, that we need to understand why this why am I more inclined toward this or toward that. Is even when we are driven by the pursuit of self-interest, that we believe that we are gaining something out of this, most of the time we don't understand in the long term, which might be our own lives or the lives of our progeny. Look what is happening, for example, in the States or in Europe, for example, where most of the people that are now about my age or older could not imagine that their children would have much more difficulties to have a good life. If the reality evolves, if we have, through the power of our creative imagination and the innate skills, we have evolved, if you want to interpret it that way, so much in science and technology that we had it's much higher productivity now. Why do we have why the loss of living of the living standards? Why the decline? How do we explain that? Yeah, it's a dangerous leftists, isn't it? Is the people that want more dignity and more equality that are the ones responsible for the mess where we live right now? Of course not. But it doesn't matter. What matters is how we are led to perceive reality. And that has nothing to do with it has a lot to do with it has a lot to do with ideological and language framing, and very little to do with our ability to judge, because our ability to judge is not an ability separated from the very ideas and concepts and values that are the basis, are the building blocks of how we analyze and interpret reality. And most of them have been inculcated. We have been colonized. It's nothing about freedom of thought or freedom of whatever. It's just natural, because it is part of our socio-cultural condition. So I'm going to stop it here today. This is very important to me, I'm not trying to convince anybody. This is not about. I just appeal to our very condition, because this. I I I mean, we need it. We need it. Yeah. Yes. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.